Over the last couple of weeks on my main channel, you would have seen me build a highly secure bike store, big enough to house 2 bikes plus a load of equipment, which is essentially made out of steel. So today I'm going to show you all the tools I use to cut and connect the steel together to make the box, most of which are a lot more affordable than you may think. I'm more than happy to admit that for many years, the thought of having to work with steel or metal, anything other than soft aluminium, would break me out to a sweat and make me very, very nervous. And that's probably because in my younger days, a number of times I tried to drill a hole in steel and I'd end up blunting the drill bit, or cut some metal and end up making a complete hash of it. But the more metal work I do, the more I realise it's a combination of technique and tools. And when I say tools, I don't mean expensive tools, I just mean making sure you've got the right tools. So I thought I'd do a little bit of a video on all the tools that I've been using in the last couple of weeks on my main channel to build this bike storage shed out of steel that I've got on with really well. Most of them aren't very expensive at all. So if you're thinking about doing some metal work, then don't be put off by it, and you don't have to invest very much to get yourself started. So let's just start with cutting steel, and let's start really basic with some grinding discs. Because one thing I've found over the last year or so is not all grinding discs are equal. These are the ones that I've been using for the last year or so. Before that, I used to use basically whatever was the cheapest. These are some Parkside cutting discs that I bought a couple of years ago. But when you start using them regularly, you'll find that these wear a lot quicker than the branded ones, and they're not that good at cutting. Whereas something like the DeWalt ones here cut through steel like butter, and they're really, really thin, which means the cuts go quicker. They also use up less battery on if you're using a battery powered angle grinder. What I'm not saying is that DeWalt cutting discs are the best. I don't know. It's just these I found really good. I'm sure Bosch or Makita or Milwaukee cutting discs may well be just as good. I don't know, I've not used them. But I'll put a link in the description below for these ones. But I do recommend these. Now, for the major cutting of the box section, one thing that I did use, because I own it, is my miter saw. This is the big 355mm Evolution steel cutting miter saw, which I reviewed a couple of months ago on the channel, which I think is an excellent piece of kit. As well as cutting any angle like a traditional miter saw does, but in steel, it actually cuts cold. So the blade, unlike an abrasive blade, doesn't produce any heat, which is really handy to work with. The biggest drawback to this miter saw is its cost. It's £700. So unless you're really keen to do a lot of metal work, it's sort of out of bounds for the average DIYer. Although Evolution do sell its little brother, which doesn't do miter cuts, but will make a really good chop saw with the same blade. And these run at about £330 in the UK. I'll put links to all of the equipment in the description below. But there's another alternative. You see, if you want to cut steel every now and again as a DIYer, and you don't want to spend hundreds of pounds on an all singing, all dancing miter saw, there is an alternative, and that is buying a blade for your circular saw. Let me just take this off and you'll see. So this is a 48 tooth, 6.5 inch or 165mm circular saw blade that fits my DeWalt. You can buy these in different sizes that are designed to cut specifically steel. So you would have seen me on the video using this, and I must say for £22 off of Amazon, it did a pretty good job. However, the one thing you really need to be aware of is the little chips of steel go in every direction. So you do need a full face mask, and you definitely need gloves and your arms covered as well. So for any straight cuts or just cutting angle or box section to the right length, all you need is a new blade for your existing circular saw and you're off and running. I was surprised to see down at the Metalwork company where I buy all of this steel from, the other day they were using exactly the same thing. When I talk to them about it, it's just because it's cordless, and for cutting things to the right length, there you go, it's the easiest thing that they find. So even the professionals can use these sort of blades as well. However, there's one more way of cutting steel that I still need to show you, and that is called using a nibbler. And this is it, it's a Metalwork nibbler. This is a cheap version that I bought from Parkside just a few months ago, and I think I paid 19.99 or 25 quid or something like that. It wasn't particularly expensive. It's essentially just a motor. You can see that this is a cheap version, it's just a brush version, that ends up pushing up and down a cylinder that's got a cut-in head on the end of it. It just goes up and down. It's about 5mm wide, and as you push that forward through the material, it just cuts lots and lots of cylinders, so one after the other, and they can all meet up, and it just nibbles away. Now, I was using this last week to cut straight lines, but really it's designed for wiggly lines. And lastly, for drilling holes in this steel, and there was a lot of drilling of holes because I was doing lots and lots of riveting, and all the holes I needed to drill to fix the cedar cladding on the front and the side. And for that, for the last couple of years, I've been using these Bosch Point Tech drill bits, which work for me. As long as you don't overspeed, they tend to stay quite sharp, so they tend to last a lot longer. I'll put a link in the description below for that. And the last thing when it comes to drilling is a step bit like this, because it's okay drilling up to a 10mm hole using a drill bit, but if you want a 20mm hole, you have to start small and use a drill bit like this, a step bit like this, that goes all the way up to 32mm. Now, this isn't an expensive bit. I think I paid maybe £5 or £6 for this, but it does work well as long as you let the drill bit do the work. If you push too much, especially in thin metal, you can end up deforming the edge. And that's why that when I was drilling using this, I actually sandwiched at one point the steel within 2 pieces of ply and then drilled all the way through, and that's helped really the steel from deforming. And if you're going to do any metal work for £5 or £6, best to have one of these in your arsenal. Right, now let's talk about connecting steel. And the first thing I need to talk about is a welding set. Now, this is the welding set that I use for the project. You would have seen a review of this a couple of months ago on this channel. This is the Parkside flux core welder, which uses flux core wire, anything up to 1mm in diameter, which is fairly small diameter, but for around the house and garden, probably means that you can do 99% of anything you'll ever want to do with it. This one obviously is from Parkside. It's around about £100 I paid for this, but you can get something very similar in Machine Mart. I've not tried those, but probably they do exactly the same sort of job. And the great thing about having a welder like this is suddenly, in the most basic terms, you can join 2 pieces of steel with an incredible strength, far more than you can with timber, which means that you can start looking at building things in a totally different way because you've got strength that you wouldn't normally have using just timber. So if you're down at Lidl and you see these on offer at all and you fancy doing a bit of welding, I would recommend getting one. They're about £100. Failing that, they do something very similar at Machine Mart, and I'm sure they do the same, they get the same sort of result, although I haven't tried them. The last thing I need to talk about is pop riveting. So pop rivets are a really basic way of joining 2 pieces of metal, whether it be sheet metal to structural metal or 2 pieces of sheet metal together. It's pretty old technology, but it works. And most people would have seen, or they already own, a pop rivet gun just like I've got here that I bought many years ago for some small project. But before I even started this project, I realised that this gun just was going to take me too long. It could easily take me 20 pulls of this arm to pop 1 rivet. And then I multiplied it by the number of rivets on the project, which I underestimated anyway, and concluded there's no way I wanted to do it with this. It would kill my hands and take a lot longer. So I thought I'd go to plan B. There must be another alternative for pop rivet machines, and there are electric alternatives that are many hundreds of pounds, but the one I found in the end that worked out really, really well, I came across on Amazon. And this is it. It's the pop rivet gun. It essentially does the same as this, but you put it on your drill and the drill takes the strain. So all you have to do is you pop it on the end of your drill and you tighten the thing up. Now that is now ready to go and to pop some rivets. So let's just see how this works. With the hole cut and the rivet in the hole, this little machine just pops over the top, and as soon as you start drilling in a forward direction, you can feel it grip onto the pop rivet and start pulling it. And literally within a second or so, the thing has been popped really without any effort at all, which is exactly what I needed when I had hundreds of these things to do. And then when you put the drill in reverse, it just ejects the steel spindle that you can now discard and move on to the next rivet. And out of all the tools I've been using for the last couple of weeks, this has been the most impressive for the grand sum of £12.99, would you believe? It's not missed a beat. It's pulled every one of the hundreds and hundreds of rivets that I've used absolutely effortlessly, with the motor doing the work rather than me. I don't think I could have actually done the job with an old gun like this. It would have killed my hands and taken twice as long. Obviously one of these fits onto any drill, and it comes with the different size heads that you can interchange and all of that. So if you're going to do any riveting at all, I would throw one of these in the bin and invest 13 quid on one of these. You won't be disappointed. Anyway, I hope that has helped with your metalwork journey. I will see you next time.